Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my rant on the 2022 vampire film Dracula, the original living vampire. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Daniel for requesting this review. And if there's another film or TV show or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, Dracula, the original living vampire, is yet another pile of absolute ass from the Asylum, a company that is well known and infamous for their mockbusters and for just unbelievably bad movies, most of which have their premiere on the Sci-Fi Channel. Now, Dracula, the original living vampire, is a mockbuster of Morbius, which is already a bad sign because Morbius was a bunch of bullshit, and it's really quite astonishing to me that this film is so inept and so bad that it can't even get over the low bar that Morbius set. I mean, Morbius was awful. Morbius was the worst film I had seen in 2022 until I saw this movie. So congrats, Dracula, the original living vampire. You're actually better than Morbius at something. You're better at being bad. Now, the film is directed by a relative a veteran of the Asylum, one of their multitude of talentless hack directors that they have at their employ, who are only working in the industry because Asylum doesn't have any standards, and they will just hire anyone who can work a camera. This is very evident with the director Maxmillian Elfeldt, who prior to this film, every other film in his filmography is just another shitty Asylum film. Yeah, he directed Bachelor Night, Avengers, Grimm, Time Wars, End of the World, Apocalypse of Ice, War of the Worlds Annihilation, Dracula, the original living vampire. And then after Dracula, the original living vampire, he directed something called A Belgian Chocolate Christmas. And now he's in pre-production with another film called Mega Ice Storm. So yeah, this is a guy who is a complete joke of a director, should not be directing anything except for maybe shitty home movies, and he's got multiple credits on his IMDb because the Asylum is still a fucking thing and is still making movies, and people are still funding this company, and people are still allowing them to disgrace cinema with their absolutely garbage films. But okay, good for him. He's paying the bills. He's living the dream. It won't last because that's how it is with all of these Asylum directors for the most part. And his direction is awful. It's really bad in this film because none of the sequences that are supposed to evoke any sort of dread, suspense, thrills, or chills manage to effectively evoke any of those things. It's very inept at times. It can't even shoot a simple sequence of one guy getting shot by another character properly. It's confusing, whether it's because of the way that the sound editing was placed into the film or just the way that it was shot. The sequences that involve vampires biting necks or getting staked just are very amateur hour, very typical type stuff with no really nice bits of style or any sort of substance to really stick with you visually. The um other sequences that are trying to be either humorous or trying to be gritty or somewhat suspenseful also fall flat. The tracking shots just make the film look even cheaper, despite the fact that it seems like this film had a bit more production value than your average Asylum film, but a bit more production value compared to your average Asylum film is still a very low budget movie. So, yeah, this direction sucked. It sucked the life out of the film in pretty much every scene because the direction was so flat and lifeless and shambling around aimlessly like a zombie or a vampire with its head cut off, with blood spurting everywhere and getting all over the place and just being an absolute mess. And if that isn't bad enough, then you have the writing by Michael Variotti, who's another guy who is an absolute talentless hack. This is the same guy who wrote a multitude of shitty Hallmark Christmas specials. Stick to Hallmark Christmas rom-coms, dude, because that's more of your wheelhouse. You're lazy, incompetent, terrible writing is not exposed like it is here because he's tasked with trying to think harder. He's tasked with trying to subvert expectations with this script. He's tasked with trying to bring some new blood and new life into the Dracula genre or the vampire genre. And what does he do? He has what equates to a poor man's Sherlock Holmes who is the lead of the film, who is essentially thinking that there is no other explanation for what is obviously vampire activity or vampire attacks than it just being vampires. That's the brilliant subversion of expectations from this writer is that you have this descendant of Van Helsing who is some kind of master investigator, Amelia Van Helsing, and she, along with Jonathan Harker, who's also a part of her team, are investigating this series of murders, and she assumes that these are all the work of a serial killer, and there's a logical explanation for things, even though there are completely unexplainable things that are happening right in front of her fucking eyes. There are bodies that are drained completely of blood with only 2 marks in the neck, and she's assuming that there has to be a logical explanation to this. It can't possibly be vampires. And then once it's finally revealed that it's vampires, it's like over an hour into the movie. Like if the screenwriter actually was talented, maybe he actually would have found a clever way to make it so the investigator was actually right. But no, this is the guy who wrote crap like what was it, like the Christmas Chronicles or some shit. Yeah, this is a guy who wrote A Christmas Reunion, Christmas with a Crown, A Christmas Mission, a bunch of other short films. He wrote the film End of the World, which is also directed by the same guy who directed Dracula, the original living vampire. Oh, he directed the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards from 2022. Who even gives a shit about that award show in the first place? I didn't even know that was even a thing. So, yeah, this guy is not well, he didn't direct it, he wrote it. Sorry, I forgot. He's not a director. But if he keeps it up, he probably will wind up being a director for the Asylum because the Asylum will hire anybody. I bet if you just had the ability to shoot a film with a camera with some semblance of decency, you would be in the running to direct a film for the Asylum. So, yeah, he wrote the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. Whoop-de-fucking-do. So, oh yeah, he also did another Christmas film, Christmas with You, which he just completed and is going to be coming out later this year on the Hallmark Channel. So yeah, this script, it's trying to subvert expectations, but it fails horribly and falls flat on its face again and again and again. The Dracula in this, the way that this character is written, he's not really that clever. He's not really that smart. He for some reason has this obsession with redheads. Dude, okay, dude, you got a thing for redheads. You know, redheads can be sexy, redheads can be hot, but I mean, why? I guess it's insinuated that it's because his lover who died, she had red hair, so now he goes around killing all these women with red hair and turning them into vampires. And I'm like, well, what does that do? That you're not getting revenge for the loss of your love by killing other women that remind you of her. It's just stupid. It doesn't make any sense. His motive is complete and utter bullshit. And then there are scenes where he's just monologuing, which is giving the team of Van Helsing and Harker enough time to get some shots in on him, and he's defeated because he's a fucking idiot. He doesn't realize that Mina has has her arm behind her back the entire time that she's talking to him and saying that she'll be with him. So then he gets staked in the heart by Mina because he's a fucking moron. He's survived for millennia and he's not able to think on his feet and think that she might be coming on to him just so that she can get him at his most vulnerable spots. I mean, jeez. Dracula in this is a total cuck. So that's not a good writing choice, if you ask me. And there are some attempts at humor, but none of them are funny. And it's another one of those scripts where so much of it is just dry, bland dialogue and people talking and not a lot of action, not a lot of intrigue, barely any gore, barely any moments of genuine horror, let alone suspense. Yeah, it's a really bad script. The whole bit of the script with Amelia Van Helsing not knowing or not accepting that it's a vampire who's doing all these murders was so infuriating. And the fact that they did nothing with that and just made it so it was just the obvious route the entire time just made all of that all the more frustrating to have to sit through. Your supposed smart Sherlock Holmes wannabe who's supposed to be whip smart and at the top of her game and better than everyone else, not being able to see the plain fact that it's a fucking vampire doing all these things and that the vampire is Count fucking Dracula. And she's billed as this smart, intelligent investigator, but like at the end of the film, she's just accepting the fact that she's a vampire now. She's like looking in the mirror and she's got teeth and she's like, oh, okay, all right, whatever. And then her reflection disappears in front of her eyes and she's just like, well, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. Now it won't take me as long to get ready in the morning. Like, just like, what the hell? What is this shit? I'm one of the undead now, and I have to drink blood to survive, and I can't go out in the daylight. But the quote from Dusk Till Dawn. You know what everybody else says about me? I suck. That's definitely how I feel about Michael Variotti's script, or Verotti. Uh, been pronouncing his name wrong. I could care less. So yeah, the script sucks, the direction sucks, and since this is an asylum film, the cast for the most part sucks too. It starts off with the lead vampire, the Dracula of Dracula, the original living vampire, Jake Herbert, who's got long hair. He looks like the lost member of Hanson. I was expecting him to break out with Mbop before he would bite someone's neck. He's not intimidating. He's not scary. He's so far outside of what you need for a commanding on screen presence to play a new, fresh, young, fearsome version of Dracula. His acting ability is every bit as good as your average high school play cast member, and his attempt at an accent was ridiculous. It's your typical attempt at like a British accent that it doesn't sound accurate to any British accent that actually exists in reality. So yeah, awful, terrible performance by Jake Herbert, the lost member of Hanson. Then you've got Christine Prouty, who's not far behind is Amelia Van Helsing, whose acting is so wooden that you could use her as a stake to kill the Dracula. Then you have India Lily Davies as Mina Murray, whose performance is every bit as good as your average Pornhub or porno actress. Ryan Woodcock is like the only performer in this that I thought was actually decent as Jonathan Harker. Like he had some charisma, some personality. I actually kind of liked the character. I just wish he was in a much better movie. Then you have Stuart Packer who plays Captain Renfield because for some reason in this film, this team of investigators is led by Captain fucking Renfield. And then of course because it's Captain Renfield, well, he's working for Dracula. I mean, that's another aspect of the script that's so lazy. Like, okay, he's working for Dracula. Well, that was expected because he's Renfield. You know how you could really throw people for a loop and really surprise people? You make it so Captain Renfield is actually not working for Dracula. And it's like Jonathan Harker or someone else that's Dracula's buddy or slave. That would be interesting. But no, that would actually take a good writer, something that this film doesn't have at its disposal. And you even have like Michael Ironside in this as Dr. Seward, and even he isn't good in this. I mean, most of his lines are just really dry, boring exposition, but even when he has lines that he might be able to sink his teeth into, his performance is pretty lame. And it's honestly pretty sad to see Michael Ironside slumming his way in films like this. It's really sad to see this, that this is where Michael Ironside is as a performer. This is the type of work that he can get because he's not getting anything else. And I think you can see that in his performance. He's just doing it for a paycheck. He's doing it to make ends meet. His heart isn't in it, and it really does show. And it just makes his scenes really hard to watch because you know that Michael Ironside is capable of much more than this. And I'm not expecting Maximilian Elfeldt to provide more or Michael Verratti, but I am expecting more from Michael Ironside, and he doesn't deliver. And there's also a score, but there's nothing. It's a type of score that you will not remember 1 second of it. There is an editor, there's a cinematographer, but I'm not even gonna bother looking either one up because it's not like the editing and the cinematography in this piece of shit is even at all noteworthy. So, really, I don't know what else to say about this movie, except it is. It is easily one of the worst films that I've seen from 2022. It does the impossible and outdoes Morbius by being an even bigger piece of shit than that film was. And yeah, I definitely do not recommend this one, even for a laugh, because it wasn't even funny. It wasn't even funny. It was just boring. It was such a boring film. I didn't care about the majority of the cast other than maybe Jonathan Harker, and that's only mainly because of the performer playing the character, not necessarily his character. Uh, but yeah, just a bad film. Just another awful, just completely asinine film from the asylum. And yeah, thanks for watching my review and my rant on Dracula, the original living vampire. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.